It's a villain's too stupid to win Easter special, but I'm all out of bunnies, chocolate and Jesus. All I have to fill the void is a digital Easter egg hunt with a force feeding of unnecessary nostalgia in a film adaptation of a novel series. We're looking at IOI from Ready Player One. In 2045, Earth is being ravaged by the predictable issues of climate change, economic ruin, conflict, resource scarcity, and apparently an extreme shortage of new entertainment, which would explain why all these young people seem obsessed with 70-plus-year-old content. Though there is one big new thing that dominates everyone's lives: a ridiculously advanced online simulation game known as the Oasis, a comprehensive simulated reality which allows its users to not only play but live, love, work, study, and do business within its realm, representing a completely new society, economy, and way of life, which everyone promptly used to retreat from their crumbling real world. The Oasis probably making humanity's long-term odds far worse than they already were. Not that its creator would have the ability to recognize the ramifications of his creation, or at least not until it was far too late. James Halliday, a neurodivergent, socially inept career virgin, who deals with his childhood trauma and makes up for his lack of social skills by overexposing us to every mundane detail of his mostly boring life. Wait, I think this guy might be one of my Facebook friends. Halliday on his death triggering a grand in-game Easter egg hunt, the winner of which will be gifted supreme control over the Oasis, his company Gregarious Simulation Systems, and a vast fortune in stock, which of course just made everyone commit to this pseudo-existence all the more. This competition decided almost exclusively by obscure pop culture and celebrity knowledge. Yeah, if someone could hit that off switch, that would probably be for the best.
This is how you plan to resolve the fate of the world's most important economic resource?
Attached to the Oasis like a parasite riding society down the gurgler, we have yet another villainous corporation, Innovative Online Industries, or IOI. Not to be confused with the short-lived reality TV K-pop group of the same name, though a comparison may indeed be warranted. In this universe, IOI is a tech and telecommunications giant and the second largest company next to GSS, their name itself being a Russian nesting doll of hidden references. First to the infamous Room 101 from 1984, which in itself was a reference to George Orwell's boring BBC meetings in a Room 101 during his journalism career. The logo also reminiscent of the paddles and ball in the classic arcade game Pong, binary code, and the old school monitor port symbol. Not that IOI would be self-conscious enough to be aware of any of this. Although they already earn big from Halliday's creation, they're desperate for more of that sweet Oasis coin, over the years attempting several hostile takeovers of GSS without success, and now heavily focusing their efforts on winning Halliday's Easter egg hunt, giving rise to a so-called Oology department filled with B-grade nerds calling themselves Halliday scholars and a legion of D-grade gamers which they've used to invade the Oasis like a plague. And at the head of this mess, we've got CEO Nolan, a typically out-of-touch corporate executive posing as a clued-up nerd, played by Ben Mendelsohn, who in his third appearance on my channel is beginning to feature as much as Tuvok. So prepare to get your geek on, crack open a can of Tab, put on some Duran Duran, and sharpen your Robotron skills, because you're about to be subjected to a relentless barrage of inane pop culture references, and the massively multiplayer online simulation game-sized stupidity of IOI. Point 1. IOI intends to destroy the profitability of the Oasis. Back before he was a soulless corporate suit, Nolan made a name for himself at Gregarious Simulation Systems as James Halliday's coffee bitch, even at this early stage of his career showing his propensity for shellcraft, searching for ways to further monetize an already wildly successful Oasis.
You could have like different tiers of accounts, like a gold member.
Failing to understand his boss and the basics of why the Oasis is popular, he wants to fundamentally transform the nature of an established game.
That would not be advisable.
Tiring of having his ideas rejected and seeing greener fields elsewhere, at some point Nolan took up a job at IOI where they eventually promoted him to CEO, which to be honest is probably the most unbelievable story arc in a world with all this noise.
Perhaps you could tell us how to get back to the lobby.
Seemingly holding a grudge against Halliday and his creation, Nolan hyperfixates on managing IOI's Oology department with the goal of transforming the Oasis into a capitalist hellscape.
We can sell up to 80% of an individual's visual field before inducing seizures.
Nolan, who was meant to be addressing the situation around the recent Copper Key winner, as I'm sure he does for every board meeting, diverts into his pie-in-the-sky ambitions for when IOI assumes control of the Oasis, which, as we'll soon find out, is an unlikely proposition to say the least. He's betting the company on a pipe dream, and the board members, despite their skepticism, are not just tolerating it, but supporting it.
Why do you put up with this guy? He's a shit show.
In the unlikely event that IOI somehow miraculously won the Easter egg hunt, odds are Nolan's policies would be disastrous for their profits. Part of the mass appeal of the Oasis is its affordability, only costing 25 cents to get started, allowing even the economically destitute to get into it with a basic rig. A model which made gaming addicts of the entire world. And now Nolan intends to bombard these broke people with advertisements for products they couldn't possibly afford, and ruining the game in the process.
I believe that any interference would be unwelcome and counterproductive.
Okay, well done. You've dominated 80% of their visual field without inducing seizures, but you're still going to be causing headaches, eye irritations, and general rage quits. Nolan's advertisements also utterly destroy the immersion of the Oasis, not to mention it corrupts the original spirit and intention of the game, which just might be the subconscious reason Nolan is doing all this. If IOI really wanted to increase profits under their hypothetical control of the Oasis, they could have simply produced more items and artifacts to sell and made a few less drastic changes to the game. The Oasis in some of the more battle-focused arenas was already pay to win. Powerful in-game items are able to be purchased with real-world currency, giving more well-off folk a distinct advantage.
Because, man, I got a lot of paper. You know, I can make you like a forest.
Yet players seemingly had no problem with this, probably because the base game was so amazing and they could still earn their way to victory. Now Nolan intends to make the base game completely unpalatable.
We call this pure O2.
It's also worth noting that pure O2 is toxic to humans, and Nolan's Oasis 2.0 is no different. It's weird that they're so focused on these theoretical monetization strategies when simply inheriting the Oasis would drastically increase IOI's bottom line. You don't even have to do anything. In fact, in the short term, that would be the preferable strategy. But I suppose asking IOI to think strategically is pointless, considering their shoddy campaign to actually take control of the Oasis. Point 2. IOI has failed to make any progress in the competition despite having a massive advantage and the solution being painfully obvious. So we join Nolan and the Oology department on their campaign to win the Big Egg along 5 years after the death of Halliday and the beginning of the competition. A forgotten player discovering the first clue, opening a gate to a big hazard-filled race, the winner of which will receive a key, one of 3 needed to win the competition. Despite Nolan's claim that all they need to win this thing is their army, they still haven't come close to obtaining a single solitary key. While many have moved on from the challenge, the most dedicated Gunters, which is about the second worst name for Halliday Easter egg hunters I can think of, are the only ones still grinding the race. And most noticeably, a regiment of IOI Gunters, a group called the Sixers, the company reducing their employees to faceless numbers. They've been smashing themselves against the race obstacles all these years without any hint of success. The Sixers, despite literally being paid to do this, are seemingly the worst players here. So much so that our broke pro tag knows to hang back in the race and farm coins from Sixer wrecks, which also begs the question of why these guys are carrying any coin at all when the most likely outcome is them all zeroing out.
I mean, why do they even have it?
When these guys aren't racing the big race, you'd think they'd be training hard in simulators or other Oasis driving games. At this point, the Sixer drivers should be the absolute best on the track. That's normally what happens when people are being paid to dedicate all their time to a singular pursuit. Instead, these IOI players seem ill-suited to racing games and possibly incapable of improvement.
That's just sad, man.
They've been racing away for years, yet they're still crashing into each other and obstacles near the very start of the race. Not that driving skill alone will get you anywhere in this competition. It's been well established that King Kong will not let anyone cross the finish line. I don't understand what the rush is with all these people. Better to hang back and let the newbies crash out. Maybe soak in the sights and try to figure out whatever unorthodox method is required to win this thing. The Halliday scholars can't have been up to much either. Probably usually alternating between sitting around twiddling their thumbs and pacing vigorously whenever Nolan enters the office. They've mostly abandoned the Halliday journals, which is an obvious key to winning the big egg. And as it turns out, the answer is indeed there, and it's staring them right in the face.
Why can't we go backwards for once?
A representation of Halliday explicitly spelling out what to do in the big race.
Backwards. Really fast. Fast as we can.
He even uses a car-related idiom to drive the point home.
Really put the pedal to the metal, you know?
You'd think the oologist would have been over this place with a fine-tooth comb, every line, word, and detail analysed and catalogued. But no, they somehow missed this. But honestly, that massive hint shouldn't even have been necessary. Everyone has been doing this race for such a long time, they surely should have tried going backwards out of boredom alone. I mean, I'm not big on racing games, but even I've attempted that on the few I've played. IOI, and all the Gunters for that matter, have zero excuse not to just play around during the race. Especially the Sixers, since they have considerable resources backing them up. And so a lonesome, impoverished Gunter, Parzival, aka Wade Watts, finally stumbles upon the simple solution required to win, obtaining the copper key and a hint to find the next challenge, reinvigorating the competition and exposing just how poorly equipped IOI is despite their resources. And as you can probably guess, they're not about to learn from their mistakes and suddenly start improving. Point 3. IOI declares war against the downtrodden, inspiring a grassroots rebellion against them, and their fumbled egg campaign won't deliver the means to quell it. After Parzival gets his name on the scoreboard, it isn't long until word spreads, allowing others to get the first key, including IOI, who were gifted their only unearned bit of progress since the competition began. Luckily for them, aside from being able to drive in reverse, getting the key doesn't require any actual skill. Nolan makes a disingenuous attempt to save face with the board by pretending he's not bothered about Parzival.
Well, here's a better question. Who cares?
But then he organises a clandestine meeting with an off-the-books Oasis bounty hunter by the name of IROC, who doesn't actually rock that hard, but I guess anyone looks good compared to these IOI clowns. IROC seems pretty invested in his digital existence. Best to keep your plans for the Oasis quiet then. I'm guessing he wouldn't take kindly to that. I'm not even sure why you'd want to hire someone who is anonymous and unaccountable to you when you have a legion of paid, contracted employees to do your bidding. Unless you're acknowledging that none of the Sixers are actually any good. Nolan paying him to take out IOI's big competitor when really considering Parzival is the only one in the world to make any progress. Wouldn't you want to follow this dude around instead, get the next key straight after him and then zero him out after he's found the location of the third challenge? But even the most basic of strategies seems far beyond Nolan. IROC tracking Parzival and Artemis to the distracted globe, learning of Parzival's true identity after he foolishly used his real name in an attempt to generate intimacy.
You're in love with a computer subroutine.
IOI seemingly crashing the party for no reason other than to zero out Parzival, making their underhanded methods painfully public when this whole raid was a pointless endeavor in the first place. Eavesdropping on Parzival was already paying dividends, maybe you should just keep doing that.
IOI always in the way.
But instead of a more subtle approach, it's left to IROC to do the brain work.
They failed to kill his avatar, which, if we're offering constructive criticism, was a lame idea and only would have slowed him down. I did a search for all the Wades who had recently bought an X1 boot suit. Parzival is Wade Watts.
Nolan then makes Parzival a lucrative offer.
$4 million a year. There's a bonus, $25 million.
Though he personally wasn't keen on it because Nolan lets his ego and emotions sabotage his Oasis campaign.
I had to make the offer. The board expected it, but I was really hoping you'd say no.
Offering Wade a job and a bribe was a complete no-brainer.
You depend on feelings and instincts to guide you, and they invariably let you down.
To make things worse, Nolan practically invites his enemy to check out his Oasis rig. But this tech company CEO has his password just sitting there on a post-it note at eye level. And why does he even need a password when this thing seems to function on facial recognition? Wade ultimately doesn't buy into Nolan's phony pop culture credentials, rejecting the offer, at which point he rips the veil off.
You should be grateful, Wade. You won't be around to endure my maniacal reign.
Admitting his reign over the Oasis would be maniacal, outing Wade's identity and resolving to execute his competitor.
Do you really think that anyone's gonna give a damn about an explosion in some ghetto trash rat barn in Columbus?
These guys take their video game competitions extremely seriously.
That sounds like a great inscription for our tombstones.
Seems kind of risky taking out the most famous player in the world, especially since at least one other person knows his identity and she hates you guys with every fiber of her being. This assassination is pretty much guaranteed to be exposed. But since he's actually intent on killing Wade, rather than using the threat of violence to get something from him, maybe it would have been a good idea to not warn your target, giving him ample time to strip off his gear and do a runner. They hadn't even planted the bombs yet. And since you're about to kill a whole bunch of innocent people and generate a whole lot of heat, at least confirm he's actually there. Wade whisked away by Artemis aka Samantha for a big face reveal, essentially forced to now join her growing rebellion against IOI, his canoodling of her triggering a revelation about the location of the next key, and as dumb luck would have it, an IOI oologist notices them entering the Halliday journals, tipping them off. Lucky you didn't kill Wade or Samantha yet guys, you need them. Realizing Wade is still alive, they send out their army of surveillance drones to find the rebels. Corporations apparently given free rein to run paramilitary groups, raiding people's homes and forcing them into indentured servitude. Thankfully Wade managed to slip away, while Samantha is remanded to a lovely facility called a loyalty center, where indebted citizens are forced to undertake menial labor in the Oasis, supposedly to pay off their debt, but unsurprisingly IOI deducts expenses and loads on more debt as they see fit, creating what amounts to a slave workforce with no legal recourse or means of escape, a grift that Samantha's own father fell victim to. This surely doing more to inspire real-world resistance than any of their activities in the Oasis ever could. And they have the audacity to pretend these slave labor camps are actually a good thing for people. As if that wasn't bad enough, at this late stage of the competition, IOI deciding it's a great time to bring one of their sworn enemies, well known as the Sixer Fixer, behind enemy lines. Shock horror though, IOI finally managed to squeeze some work out of their Halliday scholars.
IOI cracked the first 3 lines of the clue, so they knew it was Sector 14.
After receiving the second clue, they actually managed to find the third challenge all by themselves, and even their numbers are finally paying off.
So they sent every guy they had into that sector until they found the right fortress.
It's just a shame their attention-grabbing activities tipped off H. This would have probably been a good time for you guys to go low-key, and at the very least, use random avatars.
In any covert battle, logic is a potent weapon. You might try it sometime.
Instead, Nolan uses the Orb of Ossivox to deploy a massive, impenetrable shield around the final challenge, an Atari loaded with every game released on the platform, giving their flustered oologists enough breathing room to figure out which game to play, while also making it far more obvious that IOI is on the verge of winning this thing. Predictably, Nolan's password idiocy comes back to bite him, Wade enlisting the help of his best friend and some random elite gamers. One of 2 Japanese characters from the book race-swapped into a Chinese gaming prodigy, which I'm sure had absolutely nothing to do with Chinese cinema dollars.
You're the world's most badass 11-year-old ever.
He knows.
Shut up, let him tell me.
H mocking up a digital Oasis version of Nolan's office, tricking him into thinking he's under real threat in an effort to find and help Samantha, though I'm not sure she actually needed help because this corporate prison is far from being secure. The inmates have a locked visor, restraints, a shock collar equivalent, and a cell, but for some bizarre reason they've got a release mechanism for the whole deal just sitting within reach. Samantha sneaking up to Nolan's office to find the readme file for the Orb of Ossivox, and luckily for her, security around here is also non-existent. There isn't even a swipe card lock. And Nolan's personal rig suddenly doesn't operate on facial recognition either. Even without rebels running around, there must be more than a few disgruntled employees who I'm sure would love to find some dirt on Sorrento.
Kegel exercises for men.
Nolan discovering Samantha's escape, so of course it's time for a full lockdown. Or not. You'd think that would have happened the second they found the third challenge. And now Samantha, without authorization or password, can just jump on any of these Sixer rigs and get up to all kinds of mischief. Parzival, the most famous player in the world who IOI decided to make an enemy of, capitalizes on the bad will the company has been building for years, sending out a stream calling for aid from all the players of the Oasis, a call that is gloriously answered, everyone rightly concerned by the ramifications of an IOI-controlled Oasis. And why wouldn't you come? For its participants, this rebellion is extremely low risk and high reward. If the Oasis is going to be ruined anyway, zeroing out isn't such a big deal.
Tell that to the Gunter clans in the gold mines of Gygax.
On the flip side, IOI could potentially lose everything.
You are not invulnerable, hologram.
The enemy within kicking things off by bringing down the barrier and unleashing the masses upon the fortress, leading to the Sixers getting absolutely monstered by a legion of real gamers.
No man is a failure who has friends.
Meanwhile, some smarter than average oologist has finally figured out which Atari game to play, and since every other game resulted in the player dropping through the ice after 1 minute, this is definitely the right pick.
More than a minute. We're still alive. This must be the right game.
Finale lives up to her name by chasing the high five around in the real world, witnessing just how widespread this campaign against her company truly is, though she isn't really helping the cause by running around after them on foot after literally using H's van to ID them. Nolan, not normally one to get his hands dirty, suits up with Mecha Godzilla, when you'd think he would have gifted that task to one of IOI's elite gamers, if such employees even exist. Naturally, he zeroes out after putting a far bigger dent in his own forces than he did the opposition, Parzival slipping past along the way only to encounter a legion of Sixers. Luckily for him, he brought along plenty of special items, unlike IOI.
A common error among novice players.
Nolan finally realizes Samantha is still sneaking around IOI headquarters, though not even this realization will see him call for a lockdown. Instead, he's ripping masks off Sixer employees, which surely wouldn't be helping them at this point. So unimpeded by such things as security checkpoints, Samantha just strolls right out of there, mission accomplished. Wade making it to the final challenge and figuring out the key to winning the comp within 2 seconds of seeing what game is being played. The leader of the oologist dismissing adventure after their player completes the game without success, despite it being obvious it is definitely the correct game, and also missing that both other challenges needed to be played in a manner that basically violates the rules.
Our circumstances seem to require a certain flexibility.
These supposed pop culture maniacs apparently so bereft of gaming lore, they've missed that Adventure was the first game to feature a digital Easter egg, the perfect final challenge for the biggest Easter egg hunt of all. Though despite what the movie claims, in reality Adventure wasn't the first game to contain an Easter egg, it merely popularized the term, so I guess we can give the oologists a bit of leeway there. The most talented oologist finally realizes the key to winning the game, pity it's too late. I'm left wondering whether any of these people have access to Google. Nolan shows up at the last second with a woefully inadequate second bribe offer, trying to tempt Wade with a measly 50 million, when he is only a minute away from scoring 500 billion and the rest, threatening to detonate the Cataclysm bomb, which will take everyone on the planet out, failing to recognize that his boy IROC won't be too keen on that, something that wouldn't be a problem at all if Nolan had just paid him enough, but as it stands he ain't all the way committed.
I'm not going out like that. Alright, that's a camper move.
IROC calling Nolan's strategy a camper move, despite just 5 minutes ago being the most nefarious camper in gaming history. Nolan doing surprisingly well in his one-on-one with Parzival. Those Kegel exercises must be really paying off. I'm just wondering why anyone would want to wear one of these X1 suits, since feeling real-world pain is only going to slow you down. Though Nolan does manage to detonate the Cataclysm, Wade's convenient extra life token makes that endeavor all for naught. It's not like wiping everyone from the scoreboard would have had the desired result anyway. It could be anyone's game from there. Nolan wasn't even smart enough to make sure one of his key-holding employees was off-planet when he detonated the thing. That would have actually made this whole thing make a lot more sense.
But the least risky course of action is for a single crew member to make the infiltration, accompanied by a commando unit.
For some weird reason, once Parzival takes the controls, the game starts being broadcast to the world. I guess the Halliday AI detected that a good guy is playing now. Parzival passing the final hidden test when he rejects the stuffy virtual contract, showing that Nolan never had any hope of winning the contest, even if he got past the third challenge. Finale's efforts also amount to nothing, seeing Wade securing the big egg, the Oasis, and a sizable fortune. And look at how stoked all the oologists are. that Wade has won. You know the IOI hate must be strong within the company when all of these guys just lost their bonuses and their jobs, yet they're still ecstatic for an outsider getting the win. I'm beginning to think that IOI had a sleeper cell of rebels within their company taking a paycheck while sabotaging their progress. That would actually explain a lot. Nolan showing his balls still exist despite the entire trailer park now knowing what he did there. He's still keen on going in there and waving a gun around. Dude is lucky he didn't get shanked in the neck.
Start running now.
But it's a pointless endeavor considering you'd have a ton of witnesses if you actually went through with killing Wade. For a brief second, Nolan's inner nerd showing itself. Even someone as ruthless and ambitious as him seems to recognize that the Oasis is probably in good hands. And oh look, the authorities have finally made an appearance, arresting a CEO for his obvious crimes. That's how you can tell this world is fictional. Are we sure we aren't still in the Oasis? Does anyone have a spinning top handy? I guess Sorrento's last mistake was not organizing a fall guy. His corporate dickwad game needs leveling. Parzival gifting Oasis governance to his newly minted guild, bringing in a few sane-ish regulatory policies, including immediately banning IOI's loyalty centers from operating in the Oasis. Pow, right in the profits.
I think he pissed himself.
And in Ready Player 2, the novel, GSS becoming so powerful they managed to absorb IOI completely, demoting them to a subsidiary of the wider company, which is basically the corporate equivalent of an execution. Nolan gets busted out of prison but ends up being executed by a rogue AI version of Anorak. But Sorrento does receive a redemption arc of sorts from the author, Ernest Cline, deciding that a fan fiction set in his universe is now canon, in which Nolan is given a completely different set of motivations. This version of Nolan blaming the death of his sister on the Oasis, committing to a lifelong campaign of revenge, himself a sleeper agent within IOI, intent on erasing the entire Oasis the second he gets the win, and attempt to force everyone back into the real world. Luckily for me, we're looking at the movie canon, and though Nolan does have a general disdain for the Oasis,
I just as soon never set foot in the Oasis again, let alone have to deal with any of this absurdity.
I personally don't see him wanting to get rid of it completely.
That is an entirely implausible plot development.
Though it is possible his toxic Oasis 2.0 was intended to switch people off, the fanfiction in question makes it clear that Nolan is aware an off-switch exists, so concocting that whole scheme would be pointless. Though with Ready Player 2, the movie, currently in development, it'll be interesting to see what direction Spielberg and co decide to take things.
My job is not finished until I determine a motive.
Maybe you players will need to get ready for a Villains Too Stupid to Win IOI Part 2, assuming they're actually competent enough to survive into the sequel.